What's interesting to me is that over the last couple of weeks, people who normally would push back hard when someone tells them what to do with their life have just acquiesced and landed in it. Somehow along the way, between the first prediction of snow and all of the things that happened in the winter storm, we wound up being told how life was going to work for us, right? They told us we were going to get somewhere between half an inch and maybe, 90 inches of snow. It would probably include a little bit of ice or a ton of ice, and that it was going to change life for us for the foreseeable future, right? If you went to to Home Depot or to Lowe's or to any hardware store, you would notice very quickly they were out of propane. They were sold out of generators. They didn't have any salt for driveways, parking lots, all those things. It was all sold out, limits all over the place. If you went to the grocery store and you walked down the milk or the bread aisle, you saw that everybody in West Tennessee had the same memo apparently sent to their home where they are going to somehow need to go to the store and get milk and bread. I've talked to a number of people who said that they don't even know that they really need milk and bread when a winter storm happens, but it was the way they were raised. It's in some ways kind of tradition for them to go get milk and bread when most of us really just want beer and pizza when we're stuck inside for days. And so here's the thing, we were handed a script and we lived by it. We were told, so many of us, that this is the way you'll need to behave, and we just did it, right? Chris has been unpacking it for us online for the last couple of weeks, and our scripts in life look like this, right? Life happens, and then questions get asked. What am I going to need to do? We did this exactly, right? We were told that there was going to be a winter storm, and we started to ask questions. What do I need to be safe and secure? What do I need to keep myself entertained? What do I need to do or have in the house to keep me sane with my kids locked up on lockdown for weeks, maybe days or weeks in advance, right? Questions get asked and assumptions get made. I'm going to need this. We're going to have that. This is how it is going to be. And we begin to live by assumptions. Those assumptions become the scripts that we live by, and our scripts quietly run our lives. That happens, and it's not such a big deal when it comes to a winter storm, but it's a big deal when it comes to our lives, isn't it? When it's the scripts that we get handed throughout life, the ways that we normally live, they're like what Chris said was our default settings, right? And what you notice pretty quickly is that our default settings are pretty obvious. You know when you get a brand new phone, Chris mentioned this last week, but like you get a brand new phone, you pull it out of the box. Every phone, whether you're a green bubbler or a blue bubbler, right? Every brand new phone of that model comes with the exact same settings pre-installed on it. Those settings are sent the way that the factory decides this is the way we're going to send it out of the factory and to people's house. They can change the settings if they want, but the default settings are there, and they already determine things for you. There are default settings in your life and in mine that determine how things are going to go. And if you look really close, I think you'll notice that the most obvious default settings in our lives, the most obvious settings, the basic default settings are pretty obvious. Our default settings center around avoiding things that are painful or discomfort, right? I don't know about you, but I have a tendency to avoid things that cause pain or discomfort in my life. And then I want to also manipulate, change, avoid things that cause pain and discomfort and maximize pleasure and excitement and comfort, right? I mean, think about what happened when you knew that you were going to be centered in at home for a few days, right? What did you do? You didn't go to the store and buy all of the necessities, did you? You didn't buy everything that you were going to need to logically approach life. You purchased the things that you knew were going to help you avoid pain and discomfort, like being out of power, right? Or maybe like being out of water, running water in your home, right? I mean, a bunch of folks who don't have city water and sewage, right? You filled up the bathtub because you knew that if the power went down, you were going to need to be able to flush toilets. You knew that there were things that were going to have to happen, and you wanted to maximize pleasure, minimize discomfort and pain. That's normal for us when we are talking about a circumstance. But I think we order a lot of our lives around it, don't we? We order a lot of our lives around minimizing our pain and discomfort and maximizing our pleasure and our comfort. And here's the thing that happens. It's not just moments to moment. Because is there a better way to live? Maybe. Maybe we've been handed a script that tells us that avoiding pain is the most important thing. But what if going through some pain is the best way for us to have the full and rich and complete and satisfying life? What if maybe the default setting of avoid all pain at all cost is really the thing that keeps us from being able to really get free from pain? We are all handed these scripts in our life. We're handed these scripts in our life that, in a way, that kind of dictate how life works. And they come from a lot of places in our life that are pretty natural for us. Like, for instance, our upbringing. Maybe you were raised not just to get milk and bread when there's a winter storm coming, but maybe you were raised to keep people at arm's length. Or maybe the culture of your home growing up was one that decided that people were something that you couldn't risk being honest with. Nobody needs to know your business, right? We're given these scripts, and maybe our way of maintaining our comfort, increasing our comfort, and decreasing our discomfort, maybe that keeping people at arm's length business is what's keeping us from something better in life. You see, we not only get it from, kind of passive ways like what we're handed in our upbringing, we also get it from our painful experiences. We go through what, psychologists call trauma. We go through difficult bumps along the way. Can I just tell you something? You were created by God to be loved perfectly. Like, the God of heaven created you to be loved perfectly by every single person that you have encountered in your life. But can I just give you the news flash of the day, right? It's not surprising to us. You were not loved perfectly. There were people who were supposed to love you well, and they did things that harmed you. And because of that, right, we learned defenses, ways that we would maximize our comfort and our pleasure and minimize our pain and our discomfort, because we're like, hey, I don't want to go through that again. And then because of our trauma, because of the painful experience we have in our life, we tend to build a new default setting, a script that we live by. And it's not just our upbringing and just our painful experiences. In some ways, it's the culture around us. And I don't mean just the culture like the music that we listen to or the movies we see. I mean culture in terms of the nurture of the world around us, right? The expectations of what it means to be a parent. The expectations of what it means to be a good husband or a wife. The expectations that we kind of either put on ourselves or we put on people by other people, that we're supposed to do this, and win or lose, this is the main goal. You see, what happens is that we're handed a script. Those scripts come to us through assumptions, and then once we've adopted those scripts, they quietly run our lives without our thing. But what if it's those very scripts that we live by that are keeping us from being able to live free from all the things that we're really trying to avoid? What if it's our avoiding pain and maximizing pleasure? What if it's that very thing that keeps us living in pain and without real pleasure? What if it's our predetermined life that we kind of agreed on? And here's the deal. If you and I, don't take the intelligent approach and engage and recognize that we have these scripts and choose to flip them, then the reality is much of our lives are predetermined. If we don't choose, you and me, choose to flip the script, right? If we don't choose to say, nope, I recognize that I'm living one way, that I either learned from my upbringing or from my trauma or from the culture around me, and I'm choosing to live differently, then I'm just going to be stuck to keep doing the same thing over and over again, repeating the same insanity every single day. I don't know about you, but recognizing that there are some scripts in my life has really set me free from having to live by those scripts. Right now, maybe this is true of you, maybe it's not true of you, but I was thinking of some lines that come from some of the scripts that we've done. That's really what they are, right? They're a way that you're handed this script and you got to play the part of your life according to the lines that are written on that page. And some of those lines are pretty messed up. Like, for instance, like this first one might be, I'm just wired with a quick temper. It's just the way I was raised. Do you see the assumption up front? That I'm just wired that way. So it was the way I was raised, so I'll have to live by that. It's just nothing much I can do about it, is there? When we choose to live by the script that we're handed, we start life and end life with the predetermined assumption that that is the way it's going to be. I am just resigned to the fact that I'm wired with a quick temper. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't live free of that. How about this one? I'm just prone to depression. I guess there's just not much I can do about it, right? You might struggle with that in your life, but when we choose to live resigned to it, we just anticipate in September or October that there's going to be a lull that goes through this, and I guess just a third of my year is just going to be kind of lived in blah, right? But what if that's an assumption that there's never any freedom from? You see the script, the line that comes from the script that's holding you back, trying to avoid pain and maximize pleasure is keeping us from being able to experience pleasure and no pain? What about this one? I guess I'm just an introvert. It's hard for me to make new friends. You ever feel that way? Like your personality is a script that you're handed? Like there's just nothing you can do about it. I'm introverted. I guess I'll only have a few friends in my life. Do you see how the enemy's holding you back? Going, I got to maximize my pleasure and minimize my discomfort. I don't want to put myself in social settings that stretch me. You see what you're doing? Choosing to live life alone because you've resigned yourself to the script you were handed. And those of us who are like me, maybe extroverted on the other side, we tend to think the other thing's true, right? I'm just an extrovert. I'll have a lot of people around me, but nobody really gets to know me. Man, that's holding me back. I know a lot of people, but I tend to keep people at arm's length because I'm afraid that if they get to know me, they won't really like me. But when I choose to make the script, kind of set aside the script and choose to live in freedom, I can invite people into a relationship with me. It's crazy when we live past the resignation. Look at this last one. I guess I'm just tight on cash right now. I can't be generous. You see the assumption? The script tells us one thing and we live our life out of it. We can't find the freedom because we can't get past the moment, the assumption of the script. Last one. I'm just overwhelmed with the kids right now. When they're older, I'll be able to make God a priority. Do you see the assumption? We're handed an assumption, a script. We're handed a line, and we assume the line is the only way it can be played, and then life becomes predetermined from that point forward. I guess I'll have to wait till the kids are older. How much older, by the way? 4? How about 6, 7? Think when they're done with sports? Or when they're done with junior high? Or do you think it'll be like when they're done with senior nights? Or do you think it'll be done when they're done with college? Or wait a minute, now they're having kids. When do you think the assumption is going to end? When does the story stop being predetermined? It stops being predetermined when you decide that the assumption will not run your life. The script doesn't have to be played the way it's been handed to you by your upbringing, your trauma, or the experiences and culture around you. that you can choose to flip the script of your life. And it's a really fairly simple thing. It starts with a choice, right? If we're going to flip the script, just get real practical about it. If we're going to choose to live outside of the assumed behavior pattern of our life, we're going to have to start by changing the director. The director is the person who says, not only here's the script you've been handed, but the director goes, here's how all of the parts in life are going to play. Right now, the director of your life is the script that you've been handed. It really is the enemy who has controlled the way you were, the broken way you were raised. He's controlled the traumatic experiences in your life. He's controlled the culture around you. The enemy directs our story and hands us the script that says you can't, you'll always, you'll never. And the director needs to change. If we want to play out our part in Act 3, in the grand epic story that God is telling, and we want to become more than a person who has to just avoid pain and maximize pleasure, but instead is willing to endure pain so that I can find freedom from it, I have to change the director. God becomes the director of our story. The book of Proverbs is a beautiful book. The book of Proverbs is a list of what we call truisms. There are things that are true, absolute truths in the book of Proverbs, and there are things that are truisms. There are things that are generally speaking true, even if you can find maybe an off one here or there where somebody might live a little differently. One of them is so powerful, and I love this one. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he'll set your path straight. You see this part here in the middle. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. We're like, okay, that's about God. He's trustworthy. I can trust him. And on the other side of it, we want the product, right? In all your ways, submit to him, and he will set your path straight. We can get the beginning, and we get the end, right? If I trust God and submit to everything to him, he will set my path straight. But there's this part in the middle that is so hard for us. And lean not on your own understanding. What is your understanding? The understanding isn't just your wisdom. It's not just your insight. What he's not talking about there is don't lean on your own logic or brain. He's not saying disengage your mind. He's saying that there are assumptions that you live by. There are scripts that you've been handed by your upbringing, by your culture, by your own trauma. And that when you lean on your understanding, and maybe a better way to say this is lean not on your own assumptions about who you are. In all your ways, say, God, I trust you more than I trust me. I want you to direct this story, not the enemy who handed me a script in my upbringing or in my trauma or in my culture. That I trust you more than I trust me, and I'm going to choose to trust you with my life. So change the director of your story. Then there are other people on the platform with you, aren't there? When we step into Act 3, our part is played out between the great commission that Jesus calls us to in the moment when he returns. Our life gets played out in this story, and there are other people around us, aren't they? And they have such a profound effect. Some of them are really close to us, spouses or loved ones who have such a loud voice, others who are dear, close friends and people that we've known, and others are further away. We have these circles of influence in our life, but we're not just influential in them. They are so influential in our lives. And if the cast of characters around you is what is kind of bolstering up or giving credibility to the script that you were handed by your upbringing, your trauma, and the culture around you, if it's the cast of characters is not encouraging you to live against those assumptions, if they're just saying, you'll be always like that, you'll never be able to accomplish that, you're always going to struggle with that. If they're the always and never kind of people, then they're part of the old director. You can choose to flip the script by changing the director and then choosing to change the cast. Doesn't mean you got to fire everybody, by the way, right? Doesn't mean that every one of them don't have a role. And there are people in my life and in your life who are not great influences. But we've got to choose to make sure that those people are the people we influence, not the people who influence us. We've got to choose to walk with the wise. Proverbs 13:20 is probably one of the most easily memorizable moments in all of the book of Proverbs. And it just is so simple. Whoever walks with the wise grows wise, but the companion of fools suffers harm. You and I can choose to just bolster the old script by listening to the old people. Or we can choose to say, not only am I going to change the director and let God tell me who I am, and God tell me what my life should be like, and let God lead me into or out of the pain and the experiences in my life and bring healing, but I'm going to choose also to surround myself with wise people who will tell me that I'm not always stuck the way I was raised. I'm not always going to have to live by the script handed to me by my trauma. I'm not always going to have to live by the expectations of the culture around me. I'm going to choose to change not only the director, but I'm going to choose to change the cast. And that really comes into the last part, isn't it? We can change the director and we can change the cast, but the problem is, if every single week, every single day, every single moment of our life, we're going back to the same rehearsal schedule with the same cast of characters and the same director, the problem isn't the choice to change those things. It's the choice to change the rehearsal schedule in our life. It's really the invitation, what Paul says. If you want to live by a different script, it's not about you behaving differently. It's not just about changing the where you go on Sunday mornings. It's not just about doing certain things. He says this, do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind in Christ Jesus. The result? Then you'll be able to test and approve God's will, his good, pleasing and perfect will. Now, who doesn't want that, right? Don't you ever want to know what God's perfect and pleasing will is in your life? If you really want to know that, you can't live by the old script. You can't live by the assumptions from your upbringing, your trauma, and your culture. If you want to know something different, you have to do something different. The rhythm of life in your life has to change dramatically. It has to change to become a place where you're renewed. Not just a new director who tells you who you are, and not just a new cast of characters around you, a new rhythm in your life that says, I want to become the kind of person. I want to become the kind of person who lives by a different script. Can I just tell you this? Over the next 4 weeks, we're going to launch into and unpack some things that could literally change the game for you. They could change everything. It starts next week in our brand new series called Formed. And it's also a great opportunity for you to dive into community groups. Our winter community groups will meet right here in this room in the evenings on Sunday. We'll unpack a little bit of it on Sunday morning. We'll have a short experience together at 5:30 in this room. And then we'll break up into discussion groups all around this building, all just living to understand how is it that I can be formed to become the kind of person who lives free from the upbringing and the pain and the culture and chooses to live in the freedom that God has planned for me. Go off script, trade it in, and let's kick this journey off next week.